That's one of the big advantages. Like the extractor that we have is about, I think that was about $350. All of the other, the tub, the uncapping plane, and the strainers, that's another $100 to $200 worth of equipment. The infrared camera is a $400 piece of equipment. So we do have people have to sign waivers so that we can make sure things come back and not damaged. But yes, good question though.
And I see that Paul has joined us. Sorry for not getting you the link earlier, Paul, but I'm glad you're in. Bob, you want to go ahead and take?
Sure, I'll take it.
So hopefully you guys all have an exciting day. Get your coffee ready, and away we'll go.
Oops. Let me go back and do this one more time here. Oh, I'm good. Okay. Okay, everybody see my screen okay?
Yep, I'm seeing it.
Okay. Just like Dave had said, or Carl had said, 5 years ago, they attended this class. 1 year ago, I attended this class. And I virtually knew nothing about beekeeping when I came to this class last year. And some will say I still don't know much, but I've learned an awful lot through this first year of beekeeping. It is an amazing journey. So I'm going to just share with you a little bit of some of my thoughts of my first year of beekeeping. So maybe that'll help you out as well. Okay. So let's see if I can advance the slide here. Nope, too fast. Oh, one of the first things that I had to do is find a place for my hives. And I just have a regular city lot, so to speak. I don't think it's quite a half acre, but it's not a location where I would put a couple hives because I've got a lot of young kids running around the neighborhood. And so I had to go out and find a place to put my hives. And the Brown County Park System offered me to bring my hives out to Barkhausen Wildfowl Preserve out in Swamico. So those are my two hives in the picture right there. And it is in a public area, okay? It is in a public area, so I actually put up these signs that basically just gave people a little bit of warning because they do sting. You know, people need to be aware of it. And with my hives being here, a couple of the park workers have been stung already. I know I've been stung already. They do sting. So you need to be aware of where you put your hive. But this is where my hives are. And part of me putting my hives out at Brown County Park System is I need to be able to present to field trips for schools throughout the winter. Now this year, because of the COVID, I am not doing that, but I'm going to be preparing for doing that next year. So it's kind of they help me out. I'm going to help them out. I'm going to enjoy that very much. When I loaded my Nooks, and Dick will talk to you about that later, I loaded them last year on May 4th and May 12th. And they're still going strong as of today. Again, I put up that sign to make sure that people were aware of the bees were there. They're more than welcome to look. They just have to be, sometimes they're a little bit more aggressive than other times. Here are my hives as of December 31st. I went out and took this picture, and these are things that you'll learn, but I just want to share with you this slide. Each of these hives have a telescoping outer cover. They have an entrance reducer. They have bee cozies on. They have hot box on, rim feeder, sugar cakes, pollen patties, and 2 deeps. And all of these things you will learn about throughout this class. In the next section, I believe Dave is going to talk about equipment. And so you will learn this, but this is what they look like today. And if you notice here in the front, you see the little specks in front of the hives. Those are dead bees. And that's a very natural thing to occur as well. You'll learn about that also, what goes on in the wintertime. Part of being a first-year beekeeper, something that I'll recommend to you is to really get a mentor. somebody that you can talk to and ask questions, to visit your hive, to help you out, because there are a lot of challenges to it. And again, a lot of learning goes on. Because from my perspective is the questions don't stop coming. Every time I visit the hive, I have a new question. So when I get home, I'll ask Dave Elson is my mentor. I'll ask a couple different other club members, Carl and Julie, different questions. And because again, those questions are always there and I am in a learning mode, okay? The other part of getting a mentor is you want to be able to see other hives in action. It's a good thing to do. You want to have your mentor and other people come and visit your hive and give you suggestions. But this was an odd year with COVID. We didn't do much of that. We did very little of that. So hopefully as the year goes on, that'll change. Another thing as a first-year beekeeper, you should get yourself some other references, okay? There's a lot of different references out there, a lot of different books. As Dave showed in one of the early slides, there's some recommendations on books and some summaries about what those books are about. I would recommend finding yourself a good book. There's some magazines out there. I use Beekeeping for Dummies and American Bee Journal. YouTube is a great kind of a fun thing to do. There's tons of different videos of people sharing you how they do maintenance and capture swarms and do many other things around bees. But again, you can use these books and these magazines as references. So if you run into an issue, you can look up and find out what's going on. And again, but the whole idea is you will never stop learning, okay? Dave talked a little bit about the club. From my perspective, it is a great way to learn. The Brown County Beekeepers Association, Dave and Carl and Julie, they work very hard to get guest speakers in here on a monthly basis for deeper learnings about beekeeping. It's a great way to make contacts, to learn. This beekeeping coffee is great. We just started the Bees and Brews. But again, those are very casual settings where you can ask questions, you can listen in on other issues to other people. I just really enjoyed the beekeeping coffee. I could just sit in those meetings for hours and just listen to other people talk about their bees. But again, a very good idea to continue to learn and to share your experiences. One thing also that I've learned this year is that there is no one right answer. It really depends upon your situation. Everybody's different. Everybody works with their bees differently. Again, you want to be able to utilize a variety of different sources to determine what answer is right for your case. Utilize your mentor to determine what to do. Look at books, YouTube, get club advice. You're going to run into all these questions and you're going to get many different answers. And examples are, you're going to lose a queen, and what should you do? How do you do mite control? A variety of different ways to do mite control, hive maintenance, feeding and nutrition, many different ways to handle these things. My example would be is that I lost a queen at the end of June this last year, and I lost that queen at the end of June, and there's two different answers to it. I could went out and bought a queen and introduced a new queen into my hive, or I could let nature take its course and let the bees develop their own queen. And I chose the latter, and I'm glad I did. There's pros and cons to everything, but the pro was I get to experience how the bees develop their own queen. They build these super procedure cells. They all of a sudden, a month later, all of a sudden this queen appears, and you can see this frame here. You can see this frame that I'm showing this picture of. There's absolutely no capped brood on there, but all of a sudden on August 12th, here shows up a queen, and the arrow's pointing to the queen. A little hard to see, but it's a little bit bigger and a little different color. But all of a sudden she's appeared, and all of a sudden I had a thriving hive. It was just a lot of fun. But again, I could have bought a queen, or I could have let the bees again develop their own queen. I may have lost a month of production, but it was a lot of fun to watch what happened. My goal is pretty simple. I really want to be a successful beekeeper. Again, I enjoy learning. I enjoy trying something different. And there's a lot of challenges with beekeeping. And this may be a pipe dream, but I'd like to cover my costs if I can somehow get enough honey to be able to sell to again, cover the costs throughout the year. And the most important piece, I'd like to have fun. I take pictures, all these pictures in these slides. Again, I like taking photos, I like taking videos, and I'm just going to show you a couple of them right here.
Hey, Bob, have you been able to talk to any younger kids or other people about bees being out at Barkhausen at all?
Not yet. Because of COVID, they haven't had any field trips out there yet. So this winter, I'm going to develop a presentation for that, and I'll be starting that, I'm sure, either next summer or next winter for sure.
Yeah, as you're looking to pull up your other thing, I can talk about, we also have been asked to do a youth day at the Botanical Gardens. And so we're going to be doing some things out there. And so we could maybe develop that class along with you, because it's kind of a cool interactive experience for young kids.
Yeah. This picture on the right, just to show you there, the picture on the slide here, you can see the queen is marked with a green marker, and you can see the difference. You'll learn about this later too. The queen is quite a bit bigger than the worker bees that are surrounding that queen. So again, just a note. This little video, this is a little 10-second video, is showing you bees entering the hive. This is a little GoPro camera that I put on the landing strip here, and it'll show you bees bringing in pollen into the hive. So again, this is what I enjoy. I enjoy taking pictures. I'll take these home and look at them when I get home. You can see the pollen on the bees coming. Okay. Pretty quick. I had to cut it pretty short because I only have 10 minutes here. And this one here is on a hot August day. And you'll learn that what bees do to cool a hive is they will be fanning. They will fan the hive. And this is an example of that. You can see the wings really flapping hard. Okay. Another thing that I do, one of the things that I'll recommend, and I'll show you on the next slide, will be the next slide. You'll see my log that I keep on each visit. So what I do is I put on a tripod, I put my GoPro on, and I did a short video here of me doing some hive maintenance. And what I will do is I'll call out what I see in each hive, and then when I get home, I'll log that into my beekeeping log. So this is again a 10-second video.
Some caproot on frame 8. Some good caproot on 8.
On that slide here, I'm looking to try to find the queen, and I don't think I was able to find her that day. Anyway.
And that sounded like the bees were really nasty, but it's really not that bad.
Here's my log. And what I do is I'll put the date down, and I'll put the date down, and I'll have put overall comments, which basically talks to me, reminds me of what the weather was like. And then I have two hives. I call them a Packer Gold hive and a Packer White hive. And I'll just log what I see in each one of the boxes on each one of the honey supers and in the deeps. I'll write what I see on each one of the frames. If I see good caproot, if I see larvae, I'll log that, and I'll just follow that from week to week to week. So it's very important to do that. And I'm kind of anxious for this next spring to happen, because that's when I started this log. So I'll kind of follow. Look what I did last year. When did I check for mites? When did I treat for mites last year as to when I'm going to do it this year? So I'll utilize this log from year to year to year. So it's interesting. So I would recommend definitely doing a beekeeping log. Overall, what I've learned for the year, it's really not an install and go. You just don't install your bees on one day and then come back in August and harvest honey. You really have to pay attention to your bees, make sure that they're healthy, make sure they're getting the food that they need, a lot of different things. It's not one size fits all. It's not what's right for this beekeeper is right for you, or what's right for you is right for somebody else. You will learn what's right for your situation. Every situation is different.
Hey, Bob,
Yep.
a quick question. I've heard several times about 2 hives being better than 1, and I'm just curious, did you have some comparisons you felt like were valuable to make between your yellow and your white hive over the last year? Or?
Matter of fact, I have. There's number one, there are 2 different types of bees, but that's probably the least of the thing. But even today, I noticed that one hive had built up a lot more winter stores than the other hive. Okay. And when I had lost the queen, I lost the queen in one hive and I did not on the other. And so going into the winter, I could see that one hive had probably 90 pounds of honey for the winter. The other one might have had 40 or 50 pounds. So now I'm kind of watching them and how I feed them to figure out how do they survive throughout the winter. But they're always different. One is more, sometimes you'll feel like one is more active than the other hive. You may see a lot more caproot on one versus the other. It's just one has more mites than the other. They're always different. And it is kind of interesting. I find it interesting to have 2 hives. So, but yes, you'll see differences. Okay, hope that answered you.
Yep, thanks.
Learning will never end. And again, like I mentioned before, every time I visit the hive, I have new questions. I'll send Julie, Dave, and Carl a new message, and they're probably tired of me sending messages, but I'll send them a message. Okay, here's what I see. Is this right or is this wrong? What, all my bees are clustered at the top. What does that mean? I see this many mites. How should I treat them this time? I just treated them last time. It didn't seem to work. What should I do differently this time? So you will continually learn every time you visit the hive. I find it very rewarding. It was very rewarding watching the new queen get developed. It was very rewarding harvesting honey. I had 15 pounds of honey this year for my first year. I thought that was pretty cool, but very interesting. And really the biggest thing I really want to take is really the overall theme should be winter is coming. It's kind of a takeoff on Game of Thrones, if you ever watched that, but it really is. If you make sure that your bees are healthy, that they're well fed, that they're warm, that you take care of your bees, they'll last the winter, they'll survive the winter. And then honey will be a byproduct. Honey is really secondary. If you make sure that you have your bees are healthy and keep an eye on your bees, you will harvest honey. But again, the whole gist of it is making sure your bees are healthy from my perspective. So, okay.
Hopefully Bob realizes that when he says he doesn't like to bother us with questions, for us, that's one of the most energizing and rewarding parts of beekeeping is when new beekeepers ask questions, because it means they're learning. And I don't know about the rest of everybody here, but I think we all find that very rewarding and energizing.
Okay.
And we don't always have to be at the hive to have you ask questions. And I've supported people that send me a text and send me pictures, and it's a great way to help learn what's going on in your hive.
And that's why I take pictures like these pictures here that I've taken. Up on the upper right hand corner, you can see these supersedure cells here. Is when they were developing those queens, you see no cap brood on here. So I'll send that to Dave and Carl and Julie and say, okay, what do I do in this case? But that's where I find it interesting to do that. But that's why utilizing club members, getting club advice is to me very important. So. Any other questions before I go forward? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I am now up with talking about equipment. And yeah. So Bob has all the cool pictures and the nice videos, and now I'm going to be talking to you about equipment. So really exciting stuff. So today we're going to talk. We're going to show you everything there is to know about the Langstroth hive. And the reason we're doing that is because it is the most commonly used hive. I would say 80 to 85% of beekeepers in the United States use the Langstroth hive. It was developed back in 1853 by this guy, obviously named Langstroth, who looked at the behavior of bees and designed the hive with for bee space. And that's just the space that bees need to feel comfortable in their home. If you give them too much space, they will build really wonky comb all over the place. That's not very good for them, and definitely not good for you if you want to harvest any honey. And if you don't give them enough space, they can't do their job, which is to reproduce and make honey. There's an example of Langstroth hive, unfinished wood. Those are the ones that Dave and I built when we first got started. It's highly customizable. So you can mix and match, and I'll show some examples of that in future slides. It's very easy to use, and it's definitely the right choice for a beginner. This picture here shows this is a hive super, and looking down into it, and these are frames. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. So here is an example of a hive or a colony. Those names are used sometimes interchangeably. This is starting at the bottom, working your way up, and this is bottom way up. So the words and the pictures are in opposite order. I'm going to start at the bottom. You need to have a hive stand. It can be as simple as a cinder block, and I've got some examples of hive stands. Something to get your hive up off the ground. You want it about 6 to 8 inches off the ground. And the biggest reason I've been told for that, one is weeds. Keep the weeds from the entrance of your hive. Another one is skunks are interested in your bees. And if a skunk gets on their back 2 feet entrance of the hive, which is right here, when they get their belly is exposed, and the bees will come out and sting their belly. So that's why you want the hive a little bit off of the ground. So after the hive stand, you have what's called a bottom board. And there you can also have a landing board that's not displayed here, and it's not necessary, but a bottom board. So that's for the bees to land on and then go into the hive. We've got an entrance reducer, which is a little piece of wood that sits in the groove that's there to make less of a space for the bees to get in and out of the hive. And that's used if the hive is weak. It gives them less space to have to defend. And in the wintertime, you put it on and it's less cold air coming into the hive. Then you add a super or a box. There's lots of different names, and I've got some slides on that. Typically a large box is used for a brood chamber. There's displaying another large box for a brood chamber. And then up here is a medium-sized box, which are generally for honey, you're wanting the bees to make their honey into that honey super, and that's the ones you might extract if they've got enough honey to get through winter. This is an example of the frame. You can see there's multiple frames in this box, and it can be different sizes. You can have a 5-frame super, a 6-frame super, 8-frame, or 10-frame. I would say in the United States, the 2 most popular is the 5-frame, typically referred to as a nuke, and you'll hear more about that later today, or a 10-frame, which is heavy as all get out when it's full of honey. And an 8-frame is less heavy, and that's the basic reason you would use them. And I've been hearing more about on podcasts 6-frame hives that being used a lot in Europe, and I'm not exactly sure why. Then you need an inner cover, which is just a cover that goes on top of the hive with a small opening there, and then a telescoping outer cover. And so as you put your hive together, you can add 2 or 3 honey supers if you want. You can only have 1 brood chamber if you want. It's up to you. I would recommend when you start with 2 large supers and 2 medium supers, and all of the appropriate frames with foundation to go with them. And then you obviously have to have 1 bottom board for each hive, 1 inner cover, and 1 telescoping cover. Any questions on that before I move to the next slide? I'm going to go into the equipment a little more in depth on each piece, but that's kind of the overall general idea.
Carl, is that inner cover, I guess, is that sort of a different function than the outer? Well, what's the difference between the inner cover and the outer cover? What does the inner cover do?
Well, you can see right there is a little notch. That's an exit for the bees, an upper exit. That's the main reason. You also, sometimes the bees will build their comb from the frame. They will start building up and they'll attach it to the inner cover. So when you take the inner cover off, it's breaking off a little bit, and you don't want that onto the telescoping cover.
Okay.
That's the main reason for that inner cover.
Thank you.
So here's some examples of hive stands. As I said, you've got cinder blocks, nice and simple. Someone knew how to weld, got a metal frame. There's cinder blocks with some wood on top. Here's a commercially available one you can purchase that are plastic. And this is one of our bee club members went all out, built a nice frame, and has got room for 3 more hives on there. So it's lots of different variations on hive stands. It's based upon your budget and what materials you have available to you. Now I'm going to talk about hive bodies, which gets referred to as boxes, as supers, as honey supers, as brood chambers. They are all essentially the same thing. When you use those words, they have different purposes and different sizes. So a deep is 9 5/8 inches from top to bottom there. And when it's full of honey, weighs 80 pounds. So keep that in mind. Dave and I decided that we didn't want to have deeps and mediums, so we went to all deeps, even for our honey supers. And then when we found 80 pounds of honey, 3 high, that was hard as all get out to get off our hive. Well, we've gone back now and used mediums for our honey supers. Mediums, you can see, are 6 5/8 inches, 50 pounds. We don't recommend using shallows. I've never seen anybody using those before. So when you hear people talking about boxes, supers, honey super, or brood chamber, those are all referring to the same thing, and it's this outer frame, or outer box that holds the frames.
Carl,
Yes.
on that even on this slide, if someone's concerned about the weight of a deep for their brood chamber, what options would they have?
For the brood chamber, well, you can use mediums for your brood chamber as well. You just have you'll have fewer bees because there's less space for the queen to lay the eggs. And some people that run that, instead of running two mediums for their brood chamber, would run 3 mediums for their brood chamber, which is about the same amount of space from a bee perspective.
Then you're dealing with about 40 pounds versus 80 pounds.
Right, it's a lot lighter.
Okay.
From a woman's perspective, I'll just add, they just, so you know, they are really heavy. Even the frames are heavy, but I would still prefer deeps. And then you just pull the frames out and put them in an empty box. And that way, if you need to lift the deep, it's not quite as heavy.
Yeah, and I think what you had said, and it's coming at a later session, but if you go and buy a nukes usually come in deep frames.
Yes.
And you can't put them in a medium, and it's very difficult to find someone that would sell you
Right.
a nuke that are in medium frames.
Right.
Right. So our recommendation is to run deeps for your brood chambers and mediums for your honey supers.
And hopefully they all understood what Julie was. Maybe you can just talk about that just a little bit more, but yeah, you don't need to lift the whole box. You can take a couple frames out and.
Right. So we do hive checks. When you do your hive checks, you need to pull your frames out. And sometimes if you have to move a box, you can just move your frames into another empty box, empty deep. And that way, say you've got 5 frames, move 5 frames out. It's easier to lift 5 frames in a deep than it is 10 because they're so heavy.
And I think
Saves
this will
your
make
back.
I think it'll make a lot more sense to them once they see Dick when he shows them how to install a nuke. So here's frames. They have plastic frames and wooden frames. I've only used wood, and most people use wood frames. It keeps the appropriate bee space. They're built just so that the space between where you want them to build their comb is exactly what the bees in the wild like to use. The frames may contain foundation, which is what is recommended, that you use foundation. You can have foundationless frames, but that's a more advanced beekeeping. It's a little trickier, so use foundation. And this was the biggest question that I got answered in the bee class my first year, is I'd done a lot of internet research and I still didn't have any flippant idea what foundation was. And so foundation is pieces of plastic that slips into those wooden frames, and it influences where and how the bees build their comb. You can see this is a plastic foundation in a frame, and they're imprinted with the hexagon that you want the bees to build. The bees know how to do it, but we're giving them a guide with this plastic foundation, and they build it very consistently when they're given the guide to get started. When you buy foundation, get waxed foundation. It's already got a layer of beeswax on it. That encourages the bees to start building the comb a little quicker. You can get plastic foundation, which is what we recommend, or wax foundation. This is an example of wax foundation. And then that gets installed on a frame. You can see here that they have wires, but that's a lot more sensitive, especially when you're extracting the honey. You break the comb, and after the bees have done all the work of making comb, you really don't want to destroy that comb if you can get away from destroying it. Basic tools you're going to need. Well, you need protective gear. I've got another slide on that. You'll need a smoker. This is an example of a smoker. When you smoke the bees, it calms them when you're working with them. If they put off an alarm pheromone, it masks that pheromone so they don't go into attack mode. It makes them a lot more calm to work with, so you definitely need a smoker. A hive tool is required. This is one example. Another example is called a J tool, which is the one I prefer. It's got a little hook that's a J hook. I just find it easier to use. It's how you get your frames in and out of the boxes. You'll need a mite kit, and you'll learn a lot more about mites in the next class. They're the biggest pest for bees right now. That is, you'll have to be monitoring your mites and treating for mites most likely. There are lots of options for feeders. We recommend you feed your bees, especially when you get them. There's external feeders and internal feeders. I recommend an internal feeder. And then a frame rest, which there's a frame rest right here. When you take your frames out of the box, you can have some place to put them. Instead of putting them on the ground, you can put them right on the frame rest. That's an optional thing. Holds 1 to 3 frames. Some other things to think about: a flashlight sometimes is handy when you're trying to see if there are if the queen is laying eggs, because the eggs are really, really, really small. They're smaller than a grain of rice in the bottom of the honeycomb. That's what the magnifying glass can be used for. It wouldn't hurt to have Benadryl available especially if you're allergic, or an EpiPen if you're really allergic. And as Bob said, he doesn't use a notebook and pen. He uses a camera and then goes home and records it on his laptop. But you can use a notebook and pen to record your hive notes. Very important to keep hive notes. Some examples of personal protection. At a bare minimum, you have to have a veil. And that's just a veil, no other protection. Bees instinctively know that the face and eyes are the most vulnerable part of an animal, and that's what they'll go for first. Yeah, so you want to protect your head. I would also suggest you really need to have gloves. Some people use rubber gloves. I went and tried using rubber gloves, got stung 3 times, and said, to hell with that, I'm back to my leather gloves. So I use leather gloves with the long sleeves. The bees have stung the leather gloves before, but I've never gotten stung through the leather gloves. So I recommend the leather gloves. The leather gloves, you lose a lot of dexterity, but I don't think that's a problem with the way that I do beekeeping. With the rubber gloves, there are people that actually catch their queen and mark it, and so they need the manual dexterity. I don't do it that way. So if you're not comfortable with just a veil, then you can get a veil and a jacket. This is what I use, is a veil and a jacket. And if that is not enough for you, you can get the whole shebang. Footwear doesn't really matter what you wear, as long as it's your foot's enclosed. You don't want to wear sandals because you will get stung on your feet potentially. I'd wear socks. Some people put bands around their legs to keep bees from crawling up their legs. I used to do that. I stopped doing it. Never had that as a problem. So you're gonna have to get your own experience. So you definitely have to have gloves of some sort and at least a veil.
Carl, in your opinion on the jacket that you have, do you get a lot of stings on your lower body, or is it generally you wear a pair of jeans or something like that and it's not bad?
Excellent question. I generally wear a pair of jeans, have never been stung through the jeans. I got stung one time. I was wearing dark colored pants, and the bees are attracted to darker colors. That's why bee suits are white.
Okay.
I was wearing dark pants that are really thin hiking pants for the summer. I thought that'd be a good idea because it was hot. I got 6 stings on my thigh all at one time. So I pissed the bees off, and they just so happened it was right by my leg, and they got me. So I wear jeans now, no matter what the temperature. But you'll see pictures of people doing beekeeping in short pants, not wearing a veil, not wearing gloves. Don't do that. Wear your personal protection, especially in your first year. And then after that, if you want to start experimenting with how cool you might be, then go ahead and try it. But I would not do that. I use personal protection all the time that I'm working with my bees. Good question.
Carl,
anything else?
Carl,
Yeah.
you make it sound like you get stung all of the time, and I know that is not true.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dave. Yeah, I got stung 3 times this past year. So the 6 stings that I got on the one day was 2 or 3 years ago. So
And
yeah,
that was
very
a nasty,
infrequently.
and that was a nasty hive that we managed. We had to manage that hive to figure out why it was nasty.
Yeah, and yeah, I hear someone laughing there. The bees typically are not nasty, but they can become nasty, and so you'll hear some horror stories. Most likely, you're not going to have a problem. Any more questions? Okay, well then I'm going to stop sharing and turn the presentation over to Dick.
Okay, good morning. Can everyone see me?
Yep, you're not
Okay,
sharing yet. You're not sharing your screen yet.
Okay, and I'm not. I'm going to do just a basic introduction. I'm
Okay.
Dick Sturm, as you can see on the screen, and I'll be entering my 8th year of beekeeping, and my adventure and journey started very similar to what we're doing today. A local bee supplier opened for business and offered his first beginning beekeeping class, and I took it, and it's been a journey ever since. And just listening to the folks that presented before me reminded me about that journey that I'm now taking for granted. And my first year we harvested 8 pounds of honey, and this past year we harvested about 350 pounds. But we've got a short time, so we'll get to the slides and start the presentation.
Hey, Dick.
Yes.
I made a mistake. Right now is time for a break.
Oh, hey, I welcome a break.
So it is, I show it's 9:55. So let's plan everyone to be back at 10:05 to get started again. So everyone can refresh their coffee or do whatever they need to do for 10 minutes. So 10:05, we'll start back up.
And we'll be on, so if people just want to chat and have questions, we can use this as network time.
Absolutely.
And maybe to do that, maybe Dick, you want to stop sharing.
Okay, I will do that.
So you can just,
How's that?
perfect.
There we go.
One question I'd like to ask anybody who's out there is, how many of you have bees already?
This is
No
Dan
one?
and Bonnie. This is Dan and Bonnie Cunningham. We had bees, but they all died.
They all died,
Yeah,
okay.
we
And-
set
and
it
how-
up 2 years ago, and we had 1 year, great honey production, but all the bees died at the end of that year. And then
Okay.
last year, we didn't set it up.
Because we didn't know what it
Okay.
would.
Okay,
So-
so you're gonna learn a lot about
Yes.
why they may have died.
Yes,
And to help you so that you can keep your bees so that they survive through the year.
great.
I don't, you may cover this in the class, but we just went through the nooks, the supers, and the frames. So now, as you know, we have 2 5 sets. And I'm looking, I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to leave in there for brood. I don't know what I'm supposed to leave in there for honey, for the feed them in the
Yep.
spring. And I can't even tell the difference between, the brood looks pretty ugly, I think, but I really don't know what those are. So hopefully you'll be showing some pictures of the differences, what we're looking for.
Oh, you'll so much, yeah. You'll learn you'll learn how to look for your queen, how to find diseases, how much honey to
Sure.
leave at the end of the year, how to take care of your bees through the year so that they're healthy before they go into winter.
Wonderful.
And like Julie said, is when we do the hive inspection that she's going to teach in the next session, you'll get to see a lot of that, and she'll walk through when I'm doing an inspection, what am I looking for? But then when we do the at the hive experience, you'll be able to see it. So we'll be talking about it, and we'll have a list. Here's what we're going to try to make sure that we cover. And so you'll be able to see it then at the hive as well. So have all of you bought your equipment yet? Your hives and your suits, or is that something that you're looking to do as well?
Ask if anybody has one.
We have most of the equipment already.
We've got some vendors we'll probably talk about at the next session, but we've got a couple of vendors that are sponsors of the club, and they provide discounts to members. So we'll be sharing those with you most likely at the next meeting when you learn a little bit more, because when Carl and I started, we bought at the meeting, the vendors were actually there, and we bought all of the equipment. We've got the list that you saw. We've got a recommended list of things that you potentially can purchase, and or that we think you should purchase. And then there's a couple vendors, if you decide you wanted to go with them, they'll provide a little bit of a discount. It's a better approach, in my opinion, than buying it at Fleet Farm. Not that there's anything wrong with Fleet Farm in a pinch, but I think we bought a couple things from there, but for the most part, we usually use the vendors. And then also we've got some catalogs and door prizes from some of the vendors on the first slides. And if after the next session, if any of you want, well, actually, if any of you want those catalogs, reach out to me and we'll figure out a way to have a pickup point or something where you can grab a catalog or stop by.
Gretchen and Megan, what about you? Do you have any bees, or have you ever had bees, or what's your plan?
We are new to this. We've never had bees before. My husband wants to plant an apple orchard, and so we're looking at that. And with our kids getting a little older, looking for something that we can learn how to do together. So we've been accumulating some equipment, but we've never tried anything yet. So I need to see it. This is really helpful for me. My husband likes to read the books and watch the YouTube videos, and it's much more helpful for me if I can, see it and hold it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, before I was a beekeeper, I took a year of just learning. So I wanted to get into other people's hives and understand what exactly it was I was getting into. So I think it's a smart way to go about it. And it's a great thing to do with kids.
Yep. My beekeeping journey started with an offhanded comment to my wife, and then for Christmas she bought me a beekeeping book. And Dave and I are running partners. We run together. And then I was in early January said, "Hey Dave, like my wife bought me this beekeeping book. I think she's going to make me put up or shut up." And so he goes, "Hey, I got some land. I'd like to keep bees too. Why don't we do it together?" And then we found the class in that February, and we've been doing it since. So be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, and Bob asked about the breaking even part. That was one of his goals. This year, I think we'll be profitable, right, Carl?
If everything goes well, we should finally get to have paid for all of our equipment. Yes.
Year 5.
So this beekeeping is not a money-making endeavor from the get-go, unless you're really big, and then that's a lot of risk, because just like this is basically like farming. You can have good years and you can have bad years.
What about you, Renee K?
Hi. Yeah, I have a quick question. So we live on about just a little over an acre of land right here in the small city of Oconto Falls. I have 4 kids. You know, they're not babies, but they're pretty small. Do you feel like we could put the hives like near our vegetable garden? Like, how much distance do I need to have? Do they need to be kind of like off in a corner where we don't really go by those, or can we get kind of close to them?
Julie, you want to take that one, Julie?
You know, I will tell you, are you planning on 1 hive or 2 hives or?
2.
Okay. If I were you, I mean, bees are pretty gentle creatures, really, but every now and again you can get a hive that's a little more snotty. So I wouldn't put them too close to the garden. They're going to get to your garden no matter what. You want to be able to go out into your yard and not worry about having too many bees around you, or are they feeling like you're in their territory too much, or definitely not in their flight path as they come out of the hive. So I would put them a ways away from the garden. They'll be great for your garden no matter what, but I wouldn't put them too close. That's my point of view.
Well, bees will fly up to 3 miles to find food sources. So if you can have them where the adults have access to them to work the bees, but it doesn't have to be that close to your garden, but away from where your children would get in the way. But what bees typically do when they come out of the hive is they go up. And so you just don't want to be about 6 to 8 foot in front of them. Avoid that. And after that, they won't bother you really.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I would have no concerns.
For another perspective on that, I didn't get into it in my introduction, but we are city beekeepers. We keep some of our bees at our house here, and we're on about 1/3 of an acre, so a typical residential neighborhood. And currently we have 4 hives, and really have not had any issues with our neighbors being stung. And we do walk, I'm not recommending it, but we do walk within 3 feet of the hives on our way from the patio to the garden. And luckily, as a beekeeper, I'm the only guy that gets stung. So it can be done, but I would use caution too. And Julie's absolutely right about the garden. You don't want hundreds of bees coming and going while you're trying to either harvest or tend to your plants in your garden. So a little bit away from it is good, but I think if you get out beyond that 10 or 15 feet, you're pretty good, and your kids should be pretty good too.
Yeah, I mow I would say I get 5 feet away with the riding mower. I have got as much as a foot away, but I get nervous. And when all of a sudden the bees are starting to come out on the landing board or the bottom, that landing board, they're starting to come out there, then it's time to get away. But if you leave them alone, they're okay. But we had one beekeeper that she had her bees probably 30 feet from her back door. And when she opened the back door, the bees would come after her. And it was just like Julie said, it was a snotty hive. And that is very irregular. But it's something on occasion can happen. And usually that's like a fall occurrence when there's robbing going on and the bees get a little more excited when things are around. So, but we have never had bees that kind of came after us when we're just walking around them.
One of the things that Bob said, and there was a question earlier about the importance of having two hives. Beehives they're like an animal. They're a critter, and they each of them have a different personality, and it's amazing how different the personality is. So it's just like having two dogs and the difference in the personality of two dogs. Beehives are the same way. So one hive can be really, really gentle, and the other hive maybe not so much. And for the most part, honeybees are really mild-mannered little creatures.
Okay, so it's time to get started again. Thank you, Julie. Before I turn it over to Dick, the At the Hive experience on May 29th, you will need to each have your own personal protection gear. I probably didn't make that clear. If you don't, the club has 2 or 3 sets that you could use, but the expectation is you're going to be a beekeeper, you're going to need your personal protection, so you'll need to bring that to the At the Hive on May 29th. If you don't, and we don't have enough suits, you can still watch. You'll just have to stand a little bit further away. We've done this before, and people stand 8 feet away and had no problems. But what we really want is for you to wear your personal protection gear, and we'll let you hold a frame of bees and just see what's going on with the bees. So with that, I will turn it over to Dick.
Okay, here we are. I'm hoping it's set right. Is it, Carl?
Yeah, getting your bees is up.
Okay, excellent. And
can everyone else?
Thank you so much, Carl, for icing the kicker. I love it. Okay, I'm going to be talking about getting your bees. We're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about the types or races of bees. We're going to talk about packages versus nukes or nucs, really short for nucleus. And we're going to talk about how and when to order. We're going to talk about installing packages and installing nukes. And then we're going to have a demonstration using props, actual props, minus the bees, but we'll do a demonstration in order to get your bees installed. So moving right along here, we'll talk about types or races of bees. Spent a little time trying to research how to best present that, and I thought that maybe simpler is better. And a race of bee is really kind of like the general characteristics or traits of a bee that makes its race or type that has been developed over millions of years, probably, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in certain parts of the year where they were geographically isolated. Races is kind of like in bees, the same as it would be for horses or dogs, kind of like the pedigree on those creatures. And it's always interesting if you watch, say for instance, a dog show on hearing where a breed comes from and how it was developed and what it was bred for. And that's really similar in bees. I'm going to talk mainly about 2 different types of bees and keep it simple, and I will not go wrong with either of those types. They're readily available locally, and more importantly, that any beekeeper that you talk to probably will be familiar with those 2 kinds or races of bees. I'm going to talk about Italian bees, that they are the most popular bee in North America. And they have their origins, guess what, in Italy, but kind of in southern Italy on the peninsula, the heel of the boot, if you would. They've been developed from there. So the Italian bee is a very docile bee. It's calm on the comb. They're a great choice for beginners. What do we mean by docile? By docile, we mean, and we talked about it during the break, those of you that were available, we talked about some hives being a little more defensive or hyper than others or nasty. Docile refers to their degree of gentleness or their lack of being offensive, protecting their nest, that they're not likely to come out and sting you just for no reason. I'm not saying it can happen. Again, we're talking about generalities. Calm on the comb. Calm on the comb means that as you're doing your inspections, that the bees kind of stay put. They stay on the comb. They don't take flight. They're not running, jittering around. There will be movement, but they should stay on the comb. Italians are inclined to build up large populations by the end of summer, 50 to 60,000 bees. And with that many bees going, if you have a good honey flow, good source of nectar, you're going to have more honey. There are a few negatives associated with Italians, as we'll find in any breed of bees. And one of those is the tendency to drift. And drifting is a tendency of a bee to not go directly to its own hive consistently, but to drift maybe into a neighboring hive. And especially if you have more than one hive, that can happen. Another somewhat negative trait is they are more inclined to rob, and especially in the fall of the year. So Italian bees, if they find a neighboring hive, and with that tendency to drift, they will. And if that hive is not strong enough to protect itself, Italian bees tend to rob the honey from that hive and take it for their own. A description of Italian bees would be that they're generally yellow in color, bright yellow bands, and intermixed with brown or blackish stripes. Carnolians. So carnolians originate more toward the northern part of Europe, near the Alpine, the Alp range, in a specific range that is the Carnolian range. So when we think about that, okay, one of them's coming from southern Italy, kind of a Mediterranean climate, and we could compare that to mid to southern California would be a good comparison. And then when we think about a country such as Austria, which would be near the Alps, we get a vision of the difference between that. When we get into Northern Europe, that winters are longer, they're more harsh. And so bees that have lived there for millions of years have adopted so. And so they're a good choice for northern climates. Carnolians are not inclined to rob or drift. They are docile and they're calm on the comb. Many sources will tell you that Carnolians are amongst the most docile bees that you can have. They're economical on food consumption because they maintain a smaller cluster over winter. They expand rapidly in spring, and in spring is an important determination, because the Italians, they will actually start a pretty good increase during the winter months. By March, Italians are reproducing at a pretty good clip, and brooding bees, or bees that are laying eggs in development, they consume a lot of honey. Now again, no bee is perfect. So with Carnolians, you have a more likely tendency to swarm. And swarming is good for the bees. It's a sign of a really healthy beehive, but not so good for the beekeeper if you lose about half of your bees. And when bees swarm, each one of them takes a little belly full of honey with them. So you lost half of your bees and you lost a portion of your honey. In addition to that, the Canolians produced less honey than the Italians. In appearance, the Canolian bee is a little darker in color. It has a grayish look, especially if you look over a full frame of bees, it'll have a grayish look. And if you're looking at Italians, it'll definitely look somewhat yellow. I call them the blonde bees, so they look blonde. Talk about getting your bees. We're all going to get to that point where we want to get our bees, and we're going to need to order them, and it may be a package, it may be a nuke or a nucleus, and then we're going to install them. So let's talk about what you maybe want to order from listening to the earlier conversation here. One of the basic decisions would be what kind of bee do I want to get? Who to order from? As Carl and Dave said, we've got a couple of local sponsors. Let It Be is a reputable seller, as is Hanson Honey Farm. And in addition to that, we have some local club members that also sells bees. Julie, on an annual basis, prepares a list that's pretty comprehensive, not only including our sponsors and club members, but other sources for bees. And I think she's going to have that available on the club website next week. She's waiting for some finalization of bees. So important things to think about and ask when we're ordering is, what is the seller's reputation? And you can get a pretty good rundown on that just by asking fellow beekeepers. And questions to ask if you get the chance. Now, we're in an unusual circumstances where you may not be going and visiting or calling your source, but you may do it online. But answers that would be nice to have would be, what if the bees don't come in on schedule? Can I get a refund? Maybe you're not available if the delivery is delayed. What if the queen is dead? That's a huge question to ask, and many suppliers will guarantee that queen. And it's important that if that happens to you, to be courteous and ask and go about asking for a replacement. Many of the reputable dealers will replace that queen. If you can find out if the bees were they treated for mites? And when did that happen? What availability do they have? How available are your bees? And when must you order by? We're going to have another slide on that, but now is really the prime time for ordering bees. If we wait until February or March, many suppliers may be sold out. So pre-work before you get your bees. You want to ensure that you have all your equipment and your site is ready. And the next one is really important because you're going to need to feed them. So have the supplies available to prepare 1-to-1 sugar syrup, and of course the feeders that might go with it, and put in an entrance reducer that Carl spoke about that, so that the bees can easily defend their new home. On pickup day, generally you would pick up in person, so distance may be a factor that you want to consider. Some providers of bees have a mail option, and that works for you. And remember that when you do pick them up, that bees are alive, and so you can't leave them in a hot car, and you can't leave them in the back of an open pickup if it's raining or extremely cold, and especially if you're traveling, you'd want to cover them. Okay, let's talk about, did I skip a slide here? No? Okay, we're good to go. Let's talk about packages, and I'll have one to actually during the demonstration that you'll be able to view. If you look at the illustration there, you can see that there's a can in the middle of this package. That can will contain sugar syrup to provide nourishment for the bees during transportation. Many of your packages and perhaps nukes are going to come from a long distance. They will come from perhaps California, Texas, Florida, southern states where bees are able to begin their breeding and their package makeup earlier than here in the north. This package is going to contain a mated queen inside a queen cage. So we got the package itself, and then we have the queen cage. A bee package is usually 2 or 3 pounds. And by that, I mean that you can order either a 2-pound package or a 3-pound package. The 3-pound package is probably the most popular, and it would be my recommendation. But if you wanted to start a little smaller, or if you had reasons to go with a smaller package, they are available. But 3-pound is kind of the standard. The cost generally ranges for around $120, and that would be for the low end of a 2-pound package, up to $190 I've seen this year. And again, Julie will have that complete chart for available next week. Packages have some advantages. They have more adult bees than a nuke. They're less likely to have brood diseases. Their replacements are are a little bit easier to obtain. And again, 2 or 3-pound packages are the most common, and you could order them without a queen if you so wished. We've got some disadvantages in packages, and that is that the queen could be stressed. She could be injured. Remember, if these bees are coming from California or Texas, they're coming on a semi, most of them climate controlled, but they've had a long trip behind them. There are no eggs or brood until the queen starts to lay. So these bees are coming with virtually nothing but a picnic basket of syrup in that cage. The bees must be fed in order to draw a new comb, and that's important. They'll consume a lot of sugar syrup to produce wax to make the comb. They could have pests, and which would be less likely than in a nuke. And the big one is at the bottom, that and you'll see that during the demonstration, that they're more work to install. Talk a little bit about a nucleus. Nucleus is a small box containing frames of brood in all stages of development. The nucleus has a laying queen, some honey, and pollen stores. So in reality, that a nuke is like a little mini colony. It has everything it needs to exist, and many of these nukes may have been started actually outside and raised naturally and expanded to this 5 frames, 3 of which probably should be brood and eggs, and the other 2 should be resources with consisting of honey and pollen. So this nuke or nucleus has everything it needs, but additional space to expand, and that's where we come in, and that's what we want to happen. Okay, nucleus advantages, that it includes all stages of bees and brood and their own queen, and that queen should be very familiar with them. A nuke will grow faster than a package, and it is much easier to install. Now, you may find that as you're looking for bees, that some nucleuses may be offered with a caged queen. Be wary of that situation. Nucleus or nuke should not have a caged queen. That queen should be well familiar with its bees and need no adjustments and already being laid, already laying eggs. Last year, if you followed Facebook at all, there were a lot of concerns about people who had purchased nukes that had a caged queen, and that really isn't a true nucleus. So nucleuses or nukes have some disadvantages. Sometimes you may get a nuke and it may come with old equipment. The box itself may have been used, which isn't a huge deal, but it would come with comb that may have been made some years ago. That comb could be harboring diseases and need replacing soon. I make it a point to try and cycle out any frames that came with a nuke. My preference is to buy a nuke. I haven't done so for several years. I was lucky enough to be self-sustaining. The equipment may be of different types and sizes. That some of the frames in a nuke may be wood, some may be plastic, some foundation may be plastic, one piece, there may be inserts. So you don't know what you can get, and sometimes the supplier is not real particular that a frame is a frame and into a nuke box it goes. The queen could be old or of poor quality. That can happen, but I think it's on the rare side that would happen. Some suppliers may wintered queen in the nuke, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, that you know that you're getting a queen that is really vibrant and able to withstand a Wisconsin winter. So, but the queen should be no more than 1 year old. There's a higher potential for mites and small hive beetles especially. And I have gotten nukes that had small hive beetles in. A small hive beetle is not native to Wisconsin. It in general doesn't survive a Wisconsin winter or reproduce because it needs to fall on the ground and be in the larval stage for some time in the ground, and then eventually evolve from a cocoon to a small hive beetle. But they are a nuisance, and during that first summer, they can kind of tick you off. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how to install a package. And again, after we go through it verbally in the slides, that I'll be giving a demonstration. So we got a kind of a subtitle there that we're going to want to prep the packaged bee cage in the brood box. So we're going to remove a couple of frames to make ourselves some working room when we transfer the queen cage, and that's important to have enough room to work, that you're not trying to shoehorn that queen cage in there. So you're going to remove the cover from the hole in the top of the package itself, and that cover is going to be over that feeder can, and I'll be demonstrating that. And in the lower picture there, we can see what this package bee cage is going to look like when it has roughly 10,000 bees in it. Okay, continuing to prep the cage, we're going to spray the package with sugar water. And I have a note on there that only if the outside temperature is above 55. You can use your own judgment. Many times when nukes come in, they do tend to come, or packages come in, they do come in earlier than nukes. It could be the end of April, and we never know weather-wise what we're going to get in April. We could have a hint of summer, which would be great, and we have that 50, 55 degree day, or as in the last probably 2 out of 4 years, we could have a snowstorm and it could be about 40 or 35 degrees. So I would not spray them if it's extremely cold, and I'll give you an alternate during the demonstration how to install package with inclement weather. But spraying the bees with the sugar water does a couple of things. It coats them with this sticky sugar water substance, which kind of inhibits their ability to fly. And that's good for us because we don't want them to fly out of that package before we get them installed. And the second thing that it will do, it will occupy them. As they have the sugar water on them, they will begin to groom themselves and each other of the sugar water, and that will keep them busy while you're doing the install. Okay, we would take the package then and give it a sharp shake downward so that the inertia that's imparted on the bees, that they all fall to the bottom of the cage. At this point, we want to work rapidly but surely, and surely is more important than rapidly. So at that point, we're going to remove the syrup can and the queen cage from the package, and I'll demonstrate that. And as you can see here, you'll want to have your personal protective equipment on, gloves and a veil at a minimum to protect yourself. And with gloves on, it can be a little awkward trying to get that can out of there. Okay, so once we have the queen cage out of there, and we may know even before we get the queen cage out that we'll be able to see what kind of a queen cage is it, and I'll be showing you those during the demonstration. Also, it could be the plastic type that's at the top picture, or it could be the wooden type that is in the lower picture. So once we have that queen cage, the first thing we want to do is to check and make sure that the queen is alive and well. That queen cage, you know, likelihood, in addition to the queen, will have 3 to 4 attendant bees, and their function is to receive food from the other bees that are in the package cage and feed the queen and take care of her. So we'll want to look for the cork end, the cap, or the metal cover from the candy end. We want to determine where the candy is. It's going to be a white substance that the bees will need to eat through in order to release the queen. It's easy to find on the plastic one because it should be in the neck there, in the longest one. And we'll look at that during the demonstration. In the wood one is likely to have a hole on each end, and one of the holes is likely plugged with a solid wooden dowel piece. The candy will not be on that end. The other end will likely be covered with a genuine mini cork, and under that cork will be the candy. If the candy is not there and you can't find it, a piece of marshmallow would be a good substitute to use. So if the candy is there, you can poke a hole in it with a small nail or a toothpick. Okay, so our next step is to hang the queen cage between 2 frames in the middle of your box of frames, and we've made a couple of frame removals to give us room to work. And the next step there, candy side up. That's important. We want the candy side up because it is possible and happens that an attendant bee may have died in that cage, and if that happens, they'll fall to the bottom. And if the candy is on the bottom, the queen will not be able to escape. So candy side up is important. The bees need to be acquainted with the queen before she is released, and the candy being installed in the hole, requiring it to be eaten or removed by the other bees gives time for this to happen. In package bees, the queen has been in transit with their new hive fellows, so some of this acceptance is already underway when you get it. Once you've installed the queen cage and have this put back together, you're going to have to come back in a few days and take a look at that queen cage to make sure that the queen has indeed left. If she is still in there and she isn't alive, then you can remove the cork. The cork will have been out, but force that you can either open the other end or continue to poke a hole through the candy plug and release her. Okay, so the next step is that we've had these bees sugared down, and as you can see, there's many steps here. I need to find myself and follow it. So we're going to remove the temporary cover and allow the bees an open area to escape. And we are going to shake the box over the gap in the frames that you see in the photo there. And then any frames that you had removed would be replaced gently and install the telescoping, the inner cover and the telescoping cover. And again, importantly, feed these bees 1-to-1 for 3 to 4 weeks at least. When you try to shake this package of bees in, as you can see in the photo that they've used in an extra box kind of as a funnel, and I would highly recommend that. I'll show you it during the demonstration. The other thing that's significant is no matter how well you shake or how hard you shake, you probably won't get all the bees out of that transport package. So if you choose to use their left in there, can find their way to the hive, if you place it right in front of the entrance of the hive, that they will be able to sense the hive pheromones, somewhat the queen pheromones, and they will walk into the hive that you're trying to load the package into. Okay, installing a nuke. Now this one has a few less steps and is simpler, but if I remember back to my first year, nobody talked about installing a nuke, and so I'm online trying to figure out how do I do this. And for many of us, that installing our first nuke is our first contact with bees, so it can be intimidating and challenging, but it's easy to install a nuke. So again, we want to make sure that we've got the entrance reducer on. You may or may not want to plug the opening that does exist with grass. You can do that. So you're going to open the nuke hive, and generally when you get it, the entrance is going to be closed. So the easiest way to gently smoke the hive, and I'll demonstrate that, would be to simply lift the cover about 1.5 inches or 2 inches, and a couple gentle puffs of smoke under that cover. Let the cover close for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, so that the smoke can permeate the nuke box, and then you're kind of ready to go. We are again going to feed the bees. Even though they have some food with them, it's a good idea to feed them for a while until they get established, and you're adding extra boxes and the natural. Okay, so we're going to need a couple of minutes here to get the props ready, maybe not a couple of minutes, so bear with us while we change cameras and do those things. Thank you. ask any questions that you would like during this time.
Does anybody have any questions on that at all?
I have one question. I know we covered the 2 types of bees. Is there any experience with buckfast bees?
Mhm. There are several different types of bee races, and buckfast is one of them. So you're going to see buckfast, you're going to see Russian, you're going to see Carnolians, pole line, all of those. But the most common are the Italian bees and the Carnolians.
Is there any particular disadvantage with a buckfast that would make it not good for particularly a first-time beekeeper?
I ran. Oh, go ahead, please, Bob.
I've got buckfast bees, right, Dave?
You do.
So I have no issue with them at all. So
Okay.
They're gentle bees. I found there to be gentle bees. I ran buckfast last year, and they're nice bees, and they're also known to build lots of honey quickly. I found them to tend to want to swarm quickly, but might have been just the ones that I had as well. Dave, do you have any thoughts on that?
I was just looking, it says, they seem to do well in cool climates. Sometimes they say they are somewhat, I hate to use the word resistant to mites, but they're hygienic a little bit. They said it's gentle, easy to work with, good honey producers. Here it says low tendency to swarm. So ours were a little more, weren't as gentle as our Italian bees that we used to have, but so it really, I wouldn't be opposed to someone getting those, but like I said, the normal is Italians and Carnolians, and buckfast is another one that yeah, it says they're supposed to be quite docile.
The thing is, I think the key is just to try one. Try whatever kind of bee you get, just know what type it is. If you decide on Italian or you decide on a buckfast, you get that, run it for a couple of years, and then decide you want to change and see if you like that better, or talk to other beekeepers that run other types of bees. So there's this, it's always fun to experience a different race of bee and see if you can really tell a big difference.
Yeah.
Hey, Dick, are you ready?
I am.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to do the demonstration on package bee first, and one of our first steps is I have a crib note here, but let's take a look at this package, if I can.
So for those of you, if you can switch to speaker, if you're on gallery view, switch to speaker view, and then when Dick talks, he'll be big on or what he's showing will be big on your screen. That's in the, on my screen, it's the upper right-hand corner. It says view, and you click on it, and then you can go to switch between gallery and speaker. Right now, speaker would be the best view.
We're on.
Can you get that full screen?
Yeah. Go ahead, Dick.
All right. Here is a typical package. This happens to be a package that came to Carl through the mail, and we can see that within that package is the syrup can and the cage queen. The cage queen in this case is hanging from a piece of cloth that's stapled on the outside of the box, and also stapled to the queen cage. So our first step is going to be, this is where we can view it well, is we're going to remove the cover from the package itself, and we'll use our hive tool. It's simply stapled on with staples in two corners. This one has a very nice cover. It can be used for the temporary cover. You may find that as we looked at that earlier photo, that there's simply a plastic tab stapled there to keep the syrup can in place, or it may be a plastic strap across the can, but there will be some method there to keep that can in place that you'll need to remove. So at this point, we've got that removed, and we will spray the package with sugar water on both sides in order to inhibit flight and to give those bees something to do. The next thing that we're going to do is start for a sharp downward motion with a sudden stop to shake the bees to the bottom. Would be like that, and most of the bees will fall to the bottom. Okay, at this point, we can remove the can. I'm not wearing protective gear, so hopefully it goes well for me, but it may be a little more clumsy when you have gloves on. So we're going to remove that cover and immediately get to taking that queen cage out of there. As I said, this one is stapled on. Again, using your hive tool, get under that staple, being careful not to drop that queen cage in, or you're going to be forced to reach down into those 10,000 bees and retrieve it, which can be very intimidating on a first time. So as you, again, working as quickly and steadily as you can, steady being more important than quickly, remove that queen cage and temporary cover that hole again. Now, if you find that you have one of those plastic tabs holding it or a strap holding it, you're going to have to provide some type of cover so that those bees can't escape while you're working on it. So here's your opportunity. We're looking at the wood one, or it could be the plastic one. If it's the wood one, which I believe would be more likely to happen than the plastic one, survey it. Take a good look at it and think about what you're dealing with. That it may be that the fabric or string or wire or whatever it's hanging from may be on the opposite end for installing into your hive, and you may have to reverse it to the other end so that the candy end will be up. In this instance, for my convenience, luckily the candy end is up. And if we look at the end of it, I don't know if you can see it, that there's a cork plug in there.
Yep, you can see it.
Front screen. Okay, our next step is going to be to make that working room. So I'm going to take 2 frames out. And now I've got a pretty good working space. What I'm going to do is attempt on one of the frames that's left is to staple that queen cage in there. An alternate way to do that would be to use a wire and go through the screen or the staple.
Make sure your equipment works.
Okay, so we have it stapled on. It's important. Most of us on our first install will be using empty frames with foundation. If you have existing comb, you can use that, but be very aware that you don't want to close off that front side, the screen side of the queen cage. You want bees to be able to get up there to pass food, and you don't want to suffocate them by pinching that queen cage face up to the wax comb. That can happen. So next thing to do is to push it together, leaving a slight gap there. And at this point, I would gently put your frames back in.
Don't you shake them in first?
I would
Okay.
leave the gap. Adjust your frames the way that you would like them to be. And now getting ready for the shake, I like to add that additional box. Makes a nice funnel in a confined area in order to shake the bees in. Bring your bees up there, remove that temporary cover, and again, those sudden stopping, shaking motions to get most of the bees out. Now here's where the alternate way could be utilized, and it's the method that I prefer. So you've got your bees, you didn't sugar water them, you bring them with a temporary cover over the top of your confined area, remove that temporary cover, and simply face them on top, place them on top of the frames. At that time, there should be some sugar water left in your can. You can place that next to it, put your inner cover on, put your telescoping cover on, and come back tomorrow and remove the cage. The bees will have walked out of that cage down into the comb, and hopefully and naturally they would surround that queen cage. So there will only be a few bees clinging inside or on the cage, and at that time you can pull it out and add your feeder. My preference is a hive top feeder. You can see that holds a lot of 1-to-1 sugar syrup or any syrup that you're using. Remove that can. Your hive top feeder is more than likely going to have its own box, so you may have to remove that box that you used for confinement. If you're using jar type feeders, simply put your jars in there. So the four quart jar feeders are relatively common. They'll fit in both a medium or a deep. I'm using a deep right now. If you're using a bucket feeder, you can either place it on top of the inner cover, which you would have installed underneath that confinement box, or put your bucket feeder right down on.
Okay.
So that is pretty much it for the install. If there are any quick questions, we could do that while we get set up for the nuke.
So Dick, it's 10:55, so you got about 5 minutes.
Okay, and that's all I need for a nuke.
Okay, excellent. And Dave, we'll move the bee biology to the next session.
Okay.
It's gonna fall. That feeder is gonna fall. That glass feeder is gonna fall. It's very tippy, yeah. Okay.
If people wouldn't mind muting their microphone, it keeps cutting the video out when people talk and make noise. Thank you.
Okay, can everybody see that we have our nuke here?
Yep.
Okay. Smoker, lift the cover, couple of gentle puffs in the cover, recover it for around 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and we're ready to begin. You're going to need room in your brood box, so we need to remove at least 5 frames. There's 3. We'll take 3 more just to give us working room. Okay, remove the cover from the nuke. And we've got 5 frames of bees to transfer. We're going to transfer them in the same order that we take them out of the nuke box. So we're going to try to move it to the outside, lift gently, slowly, and surely with the bees on it, and transfer it to the brood box. As you have one open, you always want to work the remaining frames, in this case, toward me, so that we have room to lift them out without having the bees be what's commonly referred to as rolled or crushed between frames. Another alternate way to do it is to take 2 frames or as many as your hands can handle and transfer them together. Again, into the brood box, slowly and surely, no rapid movements. We'll get the last one in there. They're in the same order. We want our newly installed frames with the bees on them to be relatively centered in the brood box.
Just one.
And then we want to replace any missing frames on the outside of that. Those frames that are containing the bees that came from the brood box. And that pretty much completes it. And then it would be the installation of your feeder. To complete the process, put your inner cover on, put your telescoping cover on, and your hive is now functional. So I believe that's it. I know it seems really quick on this demonstration, but it is just that easy. The main thing is don't become unsettled, don't make rapid movements, and the bees should stay on the frame. There will be some bees left, once again, in your nuke box, and simply lean that up against the front of the hive, and those remaining bees will find their way in. An alternate way to do that would be to put your confined area on. And shake them into the confined area before you put your feeder on. But it really is pretty straightforward and not too hard to do. So thanks for watching.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Dick. Thank you, Dick. Are there any questions?
Yeah, quick question. Somebody had mentioned using a rack of honey to feed when you do this. Do you put that rack of honey right on top of this then?
Well, if you have it, I would put it on the outside. You're going to be, depending on whether you're using an 8-frame or a 10-frame brood box, but get your 5 frames, or there are 4-frame nukes too. Get your frames from the nuke in the center of that box, and then put your honey to the outside of those. Is that, do you understand?
And when you say outside, you mean inside the box, but on the outer edges of the box.
Exactly. Put it on the outer edges of the frame that you frames that you just installed. I put empty frames back there. You would put that frame of honey there, and that's an excellent idea. If you have it.
Oh, we got it. We're good.
But if you don't have that, we just recommend you use the sugar water. And in your packet, I believe we have the instructions on how to make that the sugar water and what that formula should be. I believe it's in there.
And we can't overemphasize the need to feed.
Yeah.
I think this question might have gotten someone answered, but I'll just bring it up again. So I've got some old hive boxes that I was considering reusing as part of assembling the whole Langstroth hives that I'll use. It sounds like there may be a chance that there could be some disease carryover. Does it seem like something I should just build some new ones, or maybe it's
Are you talking about the boxes or the frames?
the boxes?
Do you know where the boxes came from, the previous beekeeper? Why he's not using them?
I don't. I had a friend who I think a farmer down the road from him was just kind of cleaning house. He had them laying around, wasn't using them anymore, and just he ended up picking them up for nothing. The guy just wanted to clean house.
Well, the disease you're worried about is American foul brood, which can live for 40 years. So if they lost their hives to American foul brood and the spores are still in the wood, which is where they can reside, then you would be putting your bees into a situation where they would get American foul brood.
Yeah.
So there is a risk. It's just now you have to, what's your risk tolerance? Because if they get American foul brood, the solution is to kill your bees and to burn the equipment.
Right.
So you have to make the decision, do you use it or not? There is a risk. I personally believe it's a small risk, but a risk. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I would agree with that, Carl, that is your number one concern. At a minimum, I would do one or two things with that box. In either case, you'd want to scrape all of the old wax that may be attached to it and propolis, clean it as best you can. You could then wipe it out with a bleach solution, or better yet, take a propane torch and gently scorch the entire inside surface. It's not a guarantee, but it's better than doing nothing.
Thanks, Dick.
Yep, thanks.
Really good questions.
So we've actually we're at 11. We've hit the end of today's session. I know I have time and Dave has time, and I maybe Julie and Dick, that we can stick around if you have just general beekeeping questions. So we'll kind of open it up as an open forum for 10 or 15 minutes. If you have something else to do, you're welcome to leave the Zoom meeting. Just remember that it's February 13th at 9 o'clock. I will send out a link about 3 days prior to that Zoom meeting.
Now we know how to get in.
Pardon?
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to cut out. Really appreciate everything today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
You're welcome.
Bye.
And Francors, I'll make sure you get the link this time before the meeting starts.
I just had a question. You said Hanson, I have Hanson Honey Farm. What were some other ones where you can get bees from?
Let it be.
Let it.
LETITBEE. And
They're
in
just, yeah, go ahead.
They're in Greenville, Wisconsin, down a little bit west of the Fox River Mall.
Okay.
Yeah, what's interesting is we've got bees from Fleet Farm, which worked out well. We've got bees from Let It Be, and we've got a lot of people that get bees from Hanson. When you order bees like that, you just have to make sure you know where to pick them up. The first year that Carl and I ordered bees, we were supposed to pick them up in Door County, and they were a month and a half late.
Yep.
And it was almost too late for us to even get started our first year. And that's why some of the questions about if the bees are late, can I get my money back? And some of those things. There's other bees that, you may have to go to. I know there's somebody that sells bees. You have to go to West Dallas by Milwaukee to go pick up your bees. So make sure you always know, are you doing a drop in the local area? Where do I have to go to get them? And then some of the things that Dick talked about is if you do that, making sure that you can go get those bees that day, bring them back and still install them. You can leave them overnight and install them like in the morning, but you got to make sure they're not hot. We had somebody pick up bees in Milwaukee and put them in the back trunk of their car and then ran around all day and installed their bees the next day, and their bees all died because it was 100 degrees in the trunk. And then they called the beekeeper and said, I want my money back. And it's like, you have to at least be smart about it and try to get them in the hive right away.
Yeah, when you pick up your bees, you want to do everything you can to install them that day as soon as possible, so they can do what they do best in the hive versus the artificial environment you got them in while you're transporting them.
Sure.
And,
I would
Hanson,
say,
I would
Go
add
ahead.
to that if it's a nuke, as we talked about, it's that little mini colony. And because of time constraints, I didn't get into too many details. But if you have a nuke, take it right out to your hive location. If you can't install it, you can set it on the ground. I would leave it closed at least overnight, but the following day, if the weather is inclement or whatever, you can open their entrance, you can open a vent, and that nuke probably could live there for at least several days, if not several weeks. Many of them were developed in the box that you're going to get. So you will find not such a clean affair as we saw during the demonstration. There may be a lot of propolis and burr comb in naturally developed nuke hives, but get them out to the hive location, place them exactly where they're going to be, and you could let them out and they'll orientate and use their nuke box until you have time to do that install. And the install would be exactly the same as we described and demonstrated.
Okay.
and for new beekeepers, I think it's a lot easier. My opinion would be it's a lot easier to start with a nuke, because you like Dick said, a package, the supplier is, they put bees in a box and then they put a queen in. And so you're just dumping bees into your hive, and they need to start over. They need to start with everything. And they need to actually get introduced to the queen. When you've got a nuke, and all you have to do is put them into your hive when weather permits. So, and they've got food, they've got honey, they've got their comb built out. It's just a lot easier to start for a new beekeeper. It's less complicated, I think, until you start to understand what it is you're doing than a package.
Okay.
Kelly, I'm going to go get a book that we used for making our boxes, so you can see the book we did. And Carl, maybe you can talk about Kelly had a question about buying versus making boxes. I'm going to go get that book we used, but maybe you can talk about the experience.
Well, Dave has the table saw and he had all the equipment, so we did it in his garage. If you like making stuff and you're very precise about it, it can be a rewarding experience. But when you need to follow the blueprint and make it exactly to the specifications, because I talked about bee space where it needs to be. I honestly don't remember what the bee space is, but it's like 3/8 of an inch, and it's got to be 3/8 of an inch. If you get to be 1/2 an inch, that's too much, and if it's less than that, that's not enough. So if you're very precise in your woodworking ability, it can be very rewarding. But also, if you're off by a little bit, and then you get some commercially made frames that are the exact right size, it may or may not fit in your equipment, because we bought some equipment from Dave's brother-in-law, and he made his own, but he was not nearly as precise. And so we've thrown a good amount of his equipment away because we couldn't get it to fit. And we like to mix and match, and we didn't want to have to say, oh, that's the brother-in-law stuff, so we can't put that in our hives. So so that kind of just depends on how good you are.
He sold us equipment at a discount, and I don't know how many times when we're trying to put frames in boxes, the frames don't fit, the boxes don't fit, there's not enough space on the top. I I say with very kind words, that's that blank we got from my brother-in-law. But so the stuff we built, it is nice. That's the other thing too, is that, you know, a lot of people paint. We did some painting, but people paint their boxes so that there's pictures that go from the top to the bottom. You generally don't keep your boxes all in the same order. And a lot of times in the spring, we swap boxes. So we have really cool paintings on some of ours, but each box is an individual. And so mixing and matching is something that all beekeepers do. But this is the book that we have. It's Beekeeping Equipment. And you are welcome to borrow this book from us, but I've used this book quite often. It's by Tony Pisano, and this is the best book I've found for having all of the pieces. And when we put this together, I have a picture, but I have a 2-stall garage that was entirely covered with pieces, because when you're cutting, you may have, you know, we made I think we made like 6 deeps, maybe 6 to 8 medium supers, bottom boards, inside covers, top covers. We made all of it. There's probably hundreds of pieces on my garage floor. You're on mute, Kelly, if you were going to ask a question. But like I said, it was rewarding, and I'm glad we did it. But you have to be okay with spending. I think, Carl, I bet you we put in well over 40, probably closer to 80 hours doing it.
Yeah, some quality time in his cold garage during the winter.
Do you think you saved any money doing it, or was it one of those projects where you have to enjoy the process and you're probably not necessarily saving that much?
We absolutely saved money.
Yeah, we absolutely saved money, and our time wasn't worth anything. So
right.
We had free paint, so we didn't have to buy any paint. And again, I don't really like putting things together. Carl put almost all of them together, and he painted them, and I cut them all out. So having a team worked out really nice. We did buy all of the frames, however. My brother-in-law sold us a whole bunch of frames. None of them fit, none of them matched. We threw 100% of them away. They were junk. I wouldn't recommend building frames.
Yeah, we did not cut out our frames. We purchased the frames, and then I assembled them basically. So yeah, so it was rewarding. If you're so inclined, do it. You do save some money. I've got a question. What about bears? Dave, I'll let you handle that one.
On our land, I have bears. I've got pictures of bears on December 13th, right after I took my solar fencer down. We have a solar fencer that we bought from Fleet Farm, and I bought the most expensive one that we could find. I think it was $189. And then we have 6 strands of that, like that 1-inch tape that we hooked to our electric fencer. And we do know that the bears touch their nose to that electric fence. And once they touch their nose to it, they won't ever go through it. If they get their head through your fence the first time and get at your honey, well, then you're done. Then they're in it. But we haven't had any trouble. And I have a guy on the 40 acres right next to ours, and bears have been in and knocked his bees over. So electric fence works. Other people have done like a tack strip that they put in front of their hive. So I don't really think that's a good idea, because my luck, I would step on the stupid thing, like a piece of plywood with 1-inch nails sticking up. People have put that around their beehives, so the bears get the pads of their feet on it. But again, my luck, I would step on it myself, and I wouldn't do that.
And so, Dave, tell them where the land is.
Oh, we're in Morgan. So it's just a little south of Cano Falls.
Yeah. So if you're closer into around Green Bay metropolitan area, you probably don't have to worry too much about bears. Just know your area. But if there's bears in the area, electric fence is the way to go.
And if you have electric, that is a lot cheaper than a solar fence. But we just put a fence around it. What other questions you guys have?
Does anybody have any experience with buying nukes from the Amish people?
That's a great question. The first nuke that I ever bought, I bought from a local supplier, the predecessor to Let It Be. And those nukes came from an Amish supplier in, I believe, Black River Falls. They were Canolians. I had a great experience with them. I do believe that I was surprised when I opened the nuke box that I'm guessing that the frames that were in that nuke were at least 10 to 15 years old. They showed a lot of age, but as I said, I usually rotate out that equipment as quickly as I can, but I had great results with those bees. They overwintered the first year. I split them and had 2 hives during my second year. And second year, I think they produced about the 1 hive that I did allow to create surplus honey produced about 150 pounds on that second year. So I had good luck with those bees from the Amish. I was going to interject here that I believe that Fleet Farm, as far as suppliers, that they're only offering mail order, that if you order from Fleet Farm, it will be mail order only. They're charging $189.99, I believe, which for a package, which is at the top end of the spectrum. In addition to that, I would offer that your local suppliers, whether you go with somebody from the Bee Club, or if you go with Let It Be, or you go with Hanson, that comes with that personal service. The folks out at Let It Be are really great, and as well as the folks at Hanson Honey that several years ago I needed a queen, and it was on Mother's Day. I had started the procedure for a split, found out that my local guy didn't have the queen that he promised to reserve for me. And so on Mother's Day, I called up Hanson Bee Supply and talked with his wife, I think it's Chris, with his wife, and she said, come on up. So we took a ride up to Rhinelander on Mother's Day, and they took care of us for our queen needs. And both of those places are really willing to answer all your questions, and especially if you go into the store, if we ever get out of this bind that we're in, well worth your trip. And so sometimes the smaller businesses maybe offer that better service, as would a Bee Club member, and we're all here for you too, that if you have questions, no matter where you get your bees, we're here for you.
I guess the other question I have is, as far as protective gear, I'd like to get the best protective gear I can, as far as, you know, I've read about the zippered versus the pull strings around the top. What would be, in your guys' opinion, or does anybody have an opinion on what might be the best I want? Because I want to go full outfit.
If I were to go full outfit, and I've evolved through some beekeeping jackets and suits, I would make sure that you get a ventilated suit, especially if you're going to get an overall or a jumper. I think that we have a Blue Sky full suit that's very comfortable, even in warm weather. And I had some jackets that were more or less warm. You sweat a lot in some of those suits. So if you're looking for the best and you're willing to pay for it, I would go with a ventilated suit. As far as veil, and that's an advantage of going through some less expensive equipment earlier. Do you want a fencing hood? Do you want a hat with a veil? Do you want an independent one? That I started out with a fencing hood. And it worked well, but now I like the independence of just a beekeeper type helmet with a veil hanging from it that you kind of tie around under your arms. That's my preference, but each has to decide what works for them.
Yeah,
So Jim-
I've had bees get under my veil, so I personally want a hood that's zipped onto the jacket. That's just what I like. So it depends.
And I was going to agree with Dave. We have the same, he and I have the same suit, same suits, we each have our own, but they're the same design. One that zips in, so it's the hood is integrated into the jacket. And where he said it got under his veil, it's happened with me as well, where if right around here, that you zip up the coat, you zip these up, and there's a little flap that goes as Velcro's down. If you don't zip all these all the way, the bees somehow find a way to get in. I've had that happen and had to catch the bee in the netting and walk away from the hive and unzip to let him out. So,
okay.
But it's all integrated. We have one that Dick's saying kind of canvas-like material, hot as all get out. I would get one, and it's not really ventilated. So I'd get lighter material and ventilated.
Okay.
Especially if you're doing a full suit too. I have one really humid day. We worked for about an hour, and when I got done, my t-shirt was wet and I had sweat all the way down to my knees. My pants were soaked all the way down to my knees. So that
it gets hot. It does for sure.
Yeah. So I now take breaks. I don't work for an hour straight. I'll work 15, 20 minutes, then walk away from the hive and open up and cool off and then go back at it when it's really humid.
Good. Thank you.
Ventilated suits do work. There's no doubt about it. And they are more comfortable. You're never going to be entirely comfortable, but on a ventilated suit, if you have the full suit, you can wear shorts on the inside of those coveralls, and it makes a big difference in keeping you somewhat cool.
Great. Thank you.
Because we use the jacket and then just wear kind of a regular blue jeans is what we normally wear. That seems to work. I think I've had one time where a bee got underneath the jacket and stung me on the waist, but that's the only time that's ever happened. But the other thing is there's two different kinds of, well, there's more than two, but the one I have right now, it's got a little extra mesh in the hood, and there's some more ventilation on it. And I like that one, although the hood doesn't stick out as far, and 2 times I got stung in the chin. So, and most of the time that's because I was put it on and I have a hoodie, so then it pulls the face net too close. So I just have to be mindful of that. But yeah, I'm
great.
I don't have a full suit, but I wear gloves and an integrated head net at all times.
Okay.
So if you don't have a full suit too, you just remember that you want to protect your ankles. So you get put boots on that go up over ankles and your pants. And then you can put something around your pants legs to keep them from going up into your.
Yeah, you may want to wonder about how in the world would bees ever get up your pant leg, but every once in a while, a few bees fall on the ground and they just find whatever and start climbing up. And if it's your tennis shoe, they'll climb right up your pant leg, and then you'll feel them on your leg, and then you got to,
Yeah.
What other
Thank
questions do you have? I see Krista and Amy, you're still on. You have questions, and Sean?
Well, I guess I was just kind of wondering a little bit about where is going to be the best place to put the bees. I have 11 acres here, but my husband works in the back. We have our own sandblasting business, and so I was kind of concerned because of the dust that creates. Just how I would figure out where would be the best area. And then I also do have animals. I have cows and goats. And I also I live a little bit north of O'Connell Falls, but I'm right here in the middle of, I have my property, but I'm surrounded by what's cornfields, pretty much all of it.
Do they spray the cornfields?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll want to make sure you're as far away from the overspray as possible because that can kill you. We had one club member that his whole hive got killed by overspray last year.
And
Okay.
we're going to be covering where to locate your hive in the next,
Okay.
in the February session.
Oh, okay, perfect.
So but it'd probably be best to just hang on, let's
Yeah,
go through that
yeah.
presentation, and then ask it again if you don't get an
Okay.
answer.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I don't think the dust would bother them though.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so
That's
either.
kind Okay, that's what I was
And,
wondering.
and the animals, you know, if I know what it's like from cows when I was on a farm, if they decide to scratch, use your
Yeah,
beehive
okay.
as a scratching post, they'll knock it right over. So
Right.
you may want to protect them of that a little bit. That would be probably my only concern.
Yeah,
I wonder
keep-
about bears. I mean, I know bears are here. I haven't seen any, but I know that doesn't mean they're not here. But the woods are on, you know, beyond the cornfield. So I just wonder if I need to put electric around it as well.
You have cows, you probably already have electric fence, don't you?
Yes. Yeah.
So you might be able to integrate it in.
Yeah, maybe just put it in there, but just put something around it too. So, okay. Something to think about. Thank you.
I had a question about, there's a beekeeper in Freedom that I was looking at. He sells nooks. It's Fox Honey Farm. I don't know if anybody has any experience getting bees from him in particular, but
I haven't heard of him.
I
Actually, who I ordered mine from, but I got a recommendation from my friend. That's where she ordered hers from as well. So
okay.
You
Yeah.
said Fox Honey Farm?
yeah,
Fox
at a
Honey Farm.
Depeer.
I have known people that have ordered bees there and get their bees there, and I've not heard anything negative about it. I think that on the positive side, I believe that they're less expensive than some other.
They are, yeah.
We'll have to add that to our spreadsheet.
Yeah, because we ordered two. Who knows what Renee, the other gal that was here, we're friends. So.
What are they charging for a nuke?
160.
Yeah, that's a good price because I know we charged 150 last year, and we would probably charge 160 this year because it's last year we did it as long as people kind of swapped some of the extra frames with us, but we're not going to do that this year. So just to cover that extra cost, but that's a really good price.
Do you know if it's a 4-frame or a 5-frame nuke? 4-frame nukes are they're out there.
5.
It's 5. Okay.
That's a really good price.
What was it? What was the price? I missed it.
160.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's like a $30 deposit and then 130.
When you pick them up. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good deal.
Do you have to give the box back or doesn't care?
I think it's a cardboard box if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll probably get to keep that then.
So my wife's family is from Russia, and when they came to visit a couple years ago, he actually had connected with the gentleman that owns Fox Honey Farm, who is originally from Russia, and spent a little time helping him harvest honey.
Oh my!
So
You got an excellent connection there.
It was. So I got a chance to drive him back and forth and kind of get a sneak peek into their operation there. And they bring their bees down to Florida every year in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
And then back up here for the Wisconsin summers. But yeah, just to see, there was kind of an overwhelming amount of options. It seems like to buy bees, so I kind of preferred going to him just with the connection, but wasn't sure if there was any watch outs, depending on how people treat their bees or whatnot.
So
Yeah.
Amy, I see you've been holding on. Is there some questions you're waiting to ask?
No, I'm just listening to just hear what everybody else is asking and just writing stuff down as everyone's asking it.
So as you guys participated today, as you were listening to everything, is there anything that after you were like, oh, I kind of got that, but I have a lot more questions? Because when we do the At the Hive experience, we can cover more of some of these items, or in the next session, is there things that you felt like I didn't get it, that what I was looking for today?
No, we've done a lot of research on it as well. I mean, mainly my son has wanted to do it. He's 16. So he's got to go referee some hockey games. So he's getting ready to go here. But, you know, he had wanted to do it. So that's why we were taking the class and just kind of getting an idea. So he's done quite a bit of research, but he just wanted to make sure we took a class just as if there was anything else. And I think it's nice to hear like tried and true examples of what people have done and what's worked and what hasn't. So
there's definitely a learning curve.
Yeah, you may want to consider joining the club if you can. For the first half of the year, for sure, we're going to still have virtual meetings. And then this summer, we hope to be able to meet in person where based upon the health guidelines. So that's where you can really get, after you get your bees, you'll have even more questions and come to the meetings and talk to us in person or virtually.
And we have, we talk about how to test for mites, which we're going to talk about at the next class, but we have that. We've got a lady from the Minnesota Bee Squad. She's going to talk about how to read a hive and do hive inspections. We've got a couple of other different training classes that are out there. So we kind of cover we're going to talk about how to do splits in February. And that's not really a first-year beekeeper, but it's a second-year beekeeper. So we try to touch on a lot of those things. And then the other thing that Carl mentioned is when we start meeting in person, we meet at 5:30. And from 5:30 to 6:30 is a really good time. You can talk to a lot of people about whatever questions are coming up. And that's a real good opportunity as well.
Yeah, 5:30 to 6:30 is networking, basically. Sometimes we have training, but it's networking. And then the official meeting starts at 6:30. So, and we've had the teenagers come to the meetings. And so we did encourage that. Right now, one that's been like 3 years, she's going to be a freshman at Kansas State University, still doing bees though. So.
Yeah, and we have some people bring their children along, and we've got exercises for little kids, word finds, puzzles, coloring. So people bring their kids along. We've got some things for them too.
Okay, I got a quick question about the online meetings. You guys are virtual, you said?
Yes.
Right.
So if I were interested in joining the club, I could just go ahead and contact you by email or whatever, and then you'd send a Zoom contact for the 19th meeting?
What you do, go back to Eventbrite where you signed up for this meeting and purchase the membership. And if it's a family, it'd be $25. And then you'll get on our mailing list. And then the secretary sends out before each meeting, sends out the links to the meetings.
Okay.
Yes.
You also get newsletters every month, and the newsletters just talk about what's going on, what to expect with your hive, going on in your hive this month, and just what's going on in the club, which is also very valuable for beekeepers. I mean, there's a lot of beekeepers, people who keep bees, and their bees just don't survive, and they don't survive because there is quite a sharp learning curve. Like what mentioned earlier, you can't just plunk a hive out in the middle of a field and expect them to live. You have to manage them. So that whole management piece, there's a learning curve with that. And if you join the club, we'll help you learn that.
And